would like to ask the question, who is the mother? Why do we call her divine? And remind ourselves, not because you don't know the answer to it, but reminding ourselves the answer to this question is very salutary. The fact that we get an opportunity to go to the Samadhi whenever we want, or go to Mother's room once or twice a year, or Sri Aurobindo's room more often, it tends to dull the edge of our aspiration. They're all here, they're all ours, all that we have to do is just walk up. We don't know what a great grace it has been that we come here year after year, and that before we have become doddering old men, we have discovered Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So it helps once in a while to remind ourselves of our great good fortune. And I think what I am going to do in the next 45 minutes is an exercise of that kind. So the world doesn't know much about the Mother. Many people, sociologists, anthropologists, political busybodies, etc., have tried to study the Mother, who this is. And as Sri Aurobindo says, they try to understand her by their little earthly mind that loves to subject even the things that are beyond it to its own norms and standards, its narrow reasonings and erring impressions, its bottomless aggressive ignorance, and its petty self-confident knowledge. So people have tried to do it, and one worthy came to the conclusion that the Mother was no more than a French tourist who went to Pondicherry and discovered that she was a goddess. There are people like Kapali Shastriya, as we all know, who spent a whole lifetime in mantra upasana, puja, aradhana, various kinds of traditional forms of worship. And Madhav Pandit, in an introduction to a book written by Kapali Shastriya, a book very well known, I don't know, Flame of White Light, that's the name of that book, says towards the very end of Shastriji's life, Kapali Shastriya, as you know, spent all his life in traditional forms of worship, various kinds of traditional forms. Shri Vidya, Mantra Vidya, you name it, he had practiced it. Then he was a disciple of no less a person than Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni, who was himself regarded a Rishi of that time. Then he was a favorite disciple of Raman Maharshi. And finally, when he came and settled down here, for him he lived almost in ecstasy, because he knew he lived here in this ashram in the vicinity of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So Madhav Pandit writes, during his last days on one occasion, Kapali Shastriya was lying on his bed exhausted, and Madhav Pandit asked him, Shastriya, he said, you have spent a whole lifetime doing all this tapascharya. What has been your siddhi? What did you gain? Then it seems Kapali Shastriya suddenly shot up, sat down on his bed and said, the greatest siddhi of my life has been that I know who the Mother is. That has been the greatest siddhi. So even to understand, to know who the Mother is, you need the kind of tapasya that Kapali Shastriya went through. And in one of his books, Kapali Shastriya described, he says, I saw and recognized in her a conscious embodiment of the whole divine, a living murti in whom are present all the four personalities of the Adya Shakti, spoken of by Sri Aurobindo as presiding over the course of the earth's evolution. This is what Kapali Shastri saw in her.
The one whom we adore as the Mother is the divine conscious force that dominates all existence. One and yet so many-sided that to follow her movement is impossible, even for the quickest mind and for the freest and most vast intelligence. The Mother is the consciousness and force of the Supreme, and far above all she creates. But something of her ways can be seen and felt through her embodiments, and the more seizable because more defined and limited temperament and action of the Goddess forms in whom she consents to be manifest to her creature.